Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Mystic Salon. We've done a few of these over the last number of months, and this is the first one where we're leaving the West and going to the East. And I'll be reading poetry from a number of different poets, mostly from Han Shan and Shi Te, who were two wild and crazy monks who lived in ancient China, well, relatively ancient China, the 7th century AD, and were both Buddhist and Taoist, because this was a time when the country, if you could call it a country at the time, there was many different kingdoms, but the Han Dynasty had been ruling over China as we know it for centuries, successfully bringing calm and peace and good business practices. But they fell at a certain point, and it took some hundreds of years before the Tang Dynasty came along and brought back some kind of organization and balance to the political and economic systems back then. So it was during that time, as the Tang Dynasty is coming in, but the confusion of the post-Han Dynasty was still challenging for so many people, that Buddhism came in from India. And Taoism, of course, was already part of China because it's native to China, its whole belief system. And so there was a blending of the two that tended to happen where for a long time they were sort of side by side, or certain regions would be more Taoist and other regions would be more Buddhist. And then at a certain point, Buddhism gained some ascendancy and Taoism went into retreat. And then the opposite happened, and Taoism became the chief belief system, as it were, and Buddhism went into retreat. So the lines between them became murky at times. But as a result of this, there was wonderful theology, wonderful writings, wonderful mystical perspectives on the nature of reality. So I'm going to start with something from the Tao Te Ching, number 46. When the Tao is present in the universe, the horse hauls manure. When the Tao is absent from the universe, war horses are bred just outside the city. There is no greater sin than desire, no greater curse than discontent, no greater misfortune than wanting something for oneself. Therefore, he who knows that enough is enough will always have enough. And a sutra from the 42 chapters. It's called the Dharma of the Middle Way. One night, a monk was reciting the sutra by Kashyapa. His tone was woeful and tense. Plagued by doubts, he thought of abandoning the monastic life. The Buddha asked him, "What did you do when you were a householder?" He said, "I was fond of playing the lute." The Buddha asked, "What happens when the strings are too loose?" He replied, "There is no sound." "Well, what happens when the strings are too taut?" He replied, "The sound is discordant." "What happens when the strings are neither too loose nor too taut?" He replied, "All the sounds are in harmony." Pretty good one, huh? The Buddha said, "It is the same when a monk or anyone is practicing the way. If his mind is properly tuned, he will attain the way. If he pursues the way too impetuously, his body will be weary. If his body is weary, his mind will be vexed. If vexations arise, his practice will regress. If his practice regresses, his faults will increase. However, if he remains steady, serene, and in tune, he will not lose the way." And this from Han Shan. So, as I said, Han Shan and Shi Te were these two wild and crazy monks who lived in the mountains of southeast China. And Han Shan just stayed in the mountains. Shi Te went back and forth to the monastery. Shi Te was supposed to be like a cook's assistant. He would clean up the kitchen after meals, and he would bring spare food up to Han Shan in the mountains. So this is one from Han Shan. And Han Shan means cold mountain, and that's where he lived. So he called himself the name of where he lived. "Me, I'm happy with everyday way. like the mist and vines and the rock-strewn ravines. This wilderness is so free and vast, my old friends, the white clouds drift idly off. There is a road, but it doesn't reach the world. Mindless, who can be disturbed by thoughts? At night, I sit alone on a stone bed while the round moon climbs the face of Cold Mountain. So just a couple of words about the Taoist approach. Taoism and Confucianism are similar, but the main difference, as I understand it, is that Confucius has more moral codes and more rigid understandings of how society should work. Your role in society, the levels, the hierarchy of society are very important to the Confucianist approach, whereas with the Taoist approach, you're trying to understand the Tao, and the Tao is the center of everything. Everything comes from the Tao, everything returns to the Tao. What the Tao is beyond that is hard to say, and it is only by looking and trying to pursue it that we might understand the Tao in our own way, which may be different from someone else's way, because the Tao is the way. Balance, harmony, subtlety, gentleness, compassion. These are all elements of the Tao. Not about pursuing one's own needs or desires, not about achieving great things, but simply about, there's this wonderful term, it's called Wu Wei, action without intention, naturalness, simplicity. So that's the Taoist approach. Buddhism is about identifying the cause of the issue of problems in life, suffering, and what we can do to alleviate suffering. Neither of them talk about a God, about a devotional element as we do in the West with Christianity and Judaism and Islam. So it's I think the goal is the same, to be at peace and at one with life. But the approach is a little bit different, and we'll hear more about that as we continue. Great is Confucius. He perceives things and knows them before their time. He is in the same order as heaven and earth. The teacher of 10,000 things. There were lucky portents, and on the unicorn's horn a tuft of silk. The rhymes of the song compound to the sounds of metal and silk. The sun and the moon were unveiled to us. Heaven and earth were made to look fresh and joyful. Tao Te Ching 1. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of the 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one sees the manifestations. These two spring from the same source, but differ in name. This appears as darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gate to all mystery. Look upon the body as unreal, an image in a mirror, the reflection of the moon in water. Contemplate the mind as formless, yet bright and pure. Not a single thought arising, empty, yet perceptive, still, yet illuminating, complete like the great emptiness, containing all that is wonderful. You see how different this is? It's like it's all here, but none of this is here to begin with. So we're here and we're not here at the same time. And isn't that wonderful? Yeah? People ask the way to Cold Mountain. Cold Mountain? There is no road that goes through. Even in summer, the ice doesn't melt. Though the sun comes out, the fog is blinding. How can you hope to get there by copying me? Your heart and mine are not alike. If your heart were the same as mine, then you would journey to the very center. Once, my back wedded to the solid cliff, I sat silently bathed in the full moon's light. I counted their 10,000 shapes, none with substance save the moon's own glow. The pristine mind is empty as the moon. I thought, and like the moon, freely shines. By what I know of moon, I knew the mind, each mirror to each, profound as stone. From the Tao Te Ching again, this is number 8. The highest good is like water. Water gives life to the 10,000 things and does not strive. It flows in places men reject, and so is like the Tao. In dwelling, be close to the land. In meditation, go deep in the heart. In dealing with others, be gentle and kind. In speech, be true. In ruling, be just. In daily life, be competent. In action, be aware of the time and the season. No fight, no blame. Here's a couple of poems from Shite, the sidekick, some would say, to Han Shan, but just as important. You know, when in the images you find, and you will see one a little later of the two of them, you can tell because they both have these big grins on their faces, and they look like, you know, if you saw them on the other side of the street, you'd stay on your side and keep walking, perhaps. But Shite always has a broom because he's always supposed to be cleaning the kitchen, whereas Han Shan will either have a scroll with poems on it or be carrying a leaf or a rock, because it is said he composed his poetry and wrote it on leaves and rocks most of the time. So how we've got, I think there's supposed to be 300-something different poems from Han Shan that have made it down over the years, and 30 or 40 from Shite. Anyway, this is called Not Going, Not Coming. Rooted deep and still, not reaching out, not reaching in, just resting at the center. The single jewel, the flawless crystal drop, in the blaze of its brilliance, the way beyond. I laugh at myself, old man with no strength left, inclined to piney peaks in love with the lonely pathways. Oh well, I've wandered down the years to now, free in the flow and floated home the same, a drifting boat. I love that idea in these poems and in this point of view that it's sort of implicitly stated that you can trust life, even though there's so much evidence to say you can't. But still, you can trust life according to these folks, and I would tend to agree. This is one you might know from Chuang-Tzu, who was the other great Taoist. There's Lao Tzu and then Chuang-Tzu, and this one, well, you probably will recognize parts of it. Once upon a time, I, Chuang-Tzu, dreamt I was a butterfly, fluttering hither and thither, to all intents and purposes a butterfly. I was conscious only of my happiness as a butterfly, unaware that I was Chuang-Tzu. Soon I awakened, and there I was, veritably myself again. Now I do not know whether I was then a man dreaming I was a butterfly, or whether I am now a butterfly dreaming I am a man. Between a man and a butterfly, there is necessarily a distinction. The transition is called the transformation of material, a metamorphosis. So are we butterflies, or are we people? Are we rocks, or are we streams? Are we stars? Yes. Another one from Chuang-Tzu. If you persist in trying to attain what is never attained, which is the Tao's gift, if you persist in making effort to obtain what effort cannot get, if you persist in reasoning about what cannot be understood, you will be destroyed by the very thing you seek. To know when to stop, to know when you can get no further by your own action. This is the right beginning. And another one from Mr. Tzu. All that is limited by form, semblance, sound, color is called object. Among them all, man alone is more than an object. Though, like objects, he has form and semblance, he is not limited to form. He is more. He can attain to formlessness. When he is beyond form and semblance, beyond this and that, where is the comparison with another object? Where is the conflict? What can stand in his way? He will rest in his eternal place, which is no place. He will be hidden in his own unfathomable secret. His nature sinks to its root in the one. His vitality, his power hide in secret Tao. I'd just like to say that earlier this week, on Monday, these wonderful musicians got together for the first time and tried working on these pieces, played through them once, made some adjustments, played through them again for the dress rehearsal. So this is the third time they played them, and they are doing beautifully. I'm so grateful. I'd also just point out on some of the images, you see there's quite a few landscapes, sometimes natural, sometimes paintings, but almost always there are human figures in them. And I think that's one of the things that's wonderful about Chinese and Asian landscape painting. There's this great respect and honoring of the natural world, and that comes through in some of this poetry also. But the images are so fine of these almost fantastic shapes, and there's these little people walking by, checking it out. So these are the four noble truths of the Buddha. Number one, life is challenging for everyone. Our physical bodies, our relationships, all of our life circumstances are fragile and prone to change unexpectedly. We are always accommodating and so always suffering. Number two, the cause of suffering is the mind's struggle in response to challenge and the desire to hold on to things. The Buddha put it very precisely when he said it's about craving. That craving is at the heart of creation, and that each of us, and has been true from the beginning and will be through till the end, craves something we may not have. We want more food, or a nicer house, or a better job, or a new relationship, or a better relationship, or we want more money, or we want a sense of peace, or purpose, or hope that might be hard to find. And so we fixate on these things, and that craving becomes embedded in our psyche to the point where it is difficult to feel satisfied by life because we might get what it is we're hoping for. And then within 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, yeah, but that didn't really take care of it. That itch won't be scratched that easily. So number three, the Buddha said the end of suffering, a non-struggling, peaceful mind, is possible. Is possible. And the fourth noble truth is the program for ending suffering, which he called the Eightfold Path. It is wise understanding, realizing the cause of suffering. Wise intention, motivation to end suffering. Wise speech, speaking in a way that cultivates clarity. Wise action, behaving in ways that maintain clarity. Number five, wise livelihood, supporting oneself in a wholesome way. Number six, wise effort, cultivating skillful, peaceful mind habits. Number seven, wise concentration, cultivating a steady, focused, ease-filled mind. And number eight, wise mindfulness, cultivating alert, balanced, non-grasping attention. Now, as we all know, these are so easy. Simple to achieve. All it takes is a couple of weekends and you're there. You see, these are very different in the language than, say, the Sermon on the Mount from Jesus, but they're just as hard. But they lead to the same place of peace and hope and joy and allowing the grace of the Tao, the grace of the Buddha, the grace of God to fill us, to heal us, to remind us of what we actually already have, rather than fixating on the things we don't have. The Buddha then goes on to say, through the round of many births I roamed without reward, without rest, seeking the house builder. Painful is birth, again and again. House builder, you're seen. You will not build a house again. All your rafters broken, the ridgepole destroyed, gone to the unformed. The mind has come to the end of craving. Han Shan says. Climbing up Cold Mountain Path, the Cold Mountain Trail goes on and on. The long gorge choked with scree and boulders, the wide creek, the mist-blurred grass. The moss is slippery, though there's been no rain. The pine sings, but there's no wind. Who can leap the world's ties and sit with me among the white clouds? So in some ways, these poems imply that if you can live in the wilderness and be happy with that, and not be concerned that there's no central heating, no readily available food, and frankly, no other people to visit with, then you can be happy, you can be content. This is the classic point of view of the monk, whether Buddhist or Christian or any other tradition. If you can get away from the hubbub of the world, then you can be at peace. Sometimes I think that's true, but for most of us, we are here to live in this world, in this time, and in this place, and yet find a way to achieve some level of peace and contentment. And if we can do that, then we can give that back to others, right? Because we can be kind and generous to ourselves. It's much more easy to be kind and generous to others. Han Shan goes on to say, my mind is like the autumn moon, as fresh and pure as a jade pond, but nothing really compares with it. Tell me, how can I explain? How can I explain that place I go to when I'm looking at the moon on that beautiful but cold night? How can I explain that place when I feel the presence of the Tao in me, around me, connecting me to all things? Shite says, someone lives in a mountain gorge, cloud robe and sunset tassels, holding sweet plants he would share, but the road is long and hard, burdened by regrets and doubts, old and unaccomplished, called by others crippled. He stands alone, but steadfast. Steadfast in his certainty that where he is the place he is to be. What a wonderful experience. Steadfast in uncertainty, steadfast in that place. Oh, by the way, here we have Han Shan to the left, Shite to the right with the broom, and that's the one in the center is Hangen, who is called the Big Stick. So the three of them theoretically knew one another and used to hang out together, but this is the legend. You see them there, looking happy and a little mad. We have a few other poets here. This is from Pang Yun. Behold the glow of the moon, illumine the world's four quarters, perfect light in perfect space, a radiance that purifies. People say it waxes and wanes, but I don't see it fade. Just like a magic pearl, it shines both night and day. And from Tu Fu, when the mind is at peace, the world too is at peace. Nothing real, nothing absent, not holding on to reality, not getting stuck in the void. You are neither holy nor wise, just an ordinary fellow who has completed his work. In another piece, he says, I explored the grounds with monks this evening, and now the night has passed. Heavy silence rises all around us, while late moonlight spills through the forest. The mountain rises almost into heaven. Sleeping in the clouds is cold. A single stroke of the early prayer bell wakes me. Does it also awaken my soul? So when Buddhism came to China, it formed different threads, different traditions, and one was called Chan. And Han Shan and Shite and all the poets I think I'm reading are reflective of that approach, which was that you're looking to be enlightened. You're looking to find the reality, the ultimate reality, even though you're still a person, right? And so you do this through meditating or through chanting or through living a monastic life. And this one, I'm going to read now. This poem is from Meng Haozhan. He says, I Kung's palace to practice Chan, a hut in an empty grove. Outside the door, a single pretty peak. Before the stair, deep valleys. Sunset confused in footprints of the rain, blue of the void in the shade of the court. Look and see the lotus blossom's purity. Know then that nothing taints this heart. When Buddhism went over to Japan later, also different traditions began, and what was called Chan in China was called Zen in Japan. And this next little bit is from Dogen. Dogen was one of the great Zen masters, I think in the 13th century. And his words and his example are still followed traditionally in Zen practice. Because the mind is free, listening to the rain dripping from the eaves, the drops become one with me. To what shall I liken the world? Moonlight reflected in dewdrops, shaken from a crane's bill. One of the things the Buddhists have done from early on is to meditate, and often sitting for long periods of time. In fact, it is said that it was the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree for weeks that he finally attained enlightenment. So that's, it's a good example, but hard to do. So when the Buddhists came to China, a particular leader, Buddhist leader called Bodhidharma, which is bringing the story, bringing the practice, bringing the teachings of the Buddha to China. At one point, he was sitting quietly meditating under a tree, just as the Buddha himself did, and he fell asleep. He woke up with a start, so mad at himself that he tore off his eyelids so he would never fall asleep again, threw them on the ground. And what happened from those eyelids? The first tea plant grew up. And so now there was a way to stay awake during meditation. Han Shan says, sitting alone in peace before these cliffs, the full moon is heaven's beacon. The 10,000 things are all reflections. The moon originally has no light. Wide open, the spirit of itself is pure. Hold fast to the void. Realize its subtle mystery. Look at the moon like this moon that is the heart's pivot. Confucius said, "When a country is well governed, poverty and a mean condition are things to be ashamed of. When a country is ill governed, riches and honor are things to be ashamed of." That was written a long time ago. Hanshan says, 30 years ago I was born into the world. 1,010 miles I've roamed. By rivers where the green grass lies thick, beyond the border where the red sands lie. I brewed potions in a vain search for life everlasting. I read books, I sang songs of history, and today I've come home to Cold Mountain to pillow my head on the stream and wash my ears. In another poem, he says, "If I show joy and ease my troubled mind, worldly troubles into joy transform. Worry for others, it does no good in the end. The great Tao, all amid joy, is reborn. In a joyous state, ruler and subject accord. In a joyous home, father and son get along. If brothers increase their joy, the world will flourish. If husband and wife have joy, it's worthy of song. What guest and host can bear a lack of joy? Both high and low in joy lose their woe before long." I heard sadness cannot be driven away. I didn't think it is true, so yesterday I pushed it back. Today it returned and tangled me up. Months end, but sadness doesn't. Years are renewed, and so is sadness. Who guessed that under my wisteria hat there is a sadness this old? Even in the mountains, he can't escape from all of the things we deal with down on the plains. These are 3 by Shite. Greedy people are good at accumulating wealth, like owls who love their young, though when the children grow, they devour their mothers. Possessions are just like this. When you give them away, you grow happy. When you hoard them, it brings misfortune. Owning nothing causes no harm, like a bird flapping its wings in the great blue sky. Since growing up, I've been disturbed by the chaos of worldly affairs, but I just can't abandon ordinary people, so I visit from time to time. Yesterday, I went to a funeral for the fifth son of Zhu. Today, we send off Lu's third child. There's not a moment of peace for my sorrowful heart. In the past, I saw a brilliant man whose broad knowledge and sterling spirit were beyond compare. Once he passed the national exam, his name was celebrated everywhere. His 5 ideographed poems surpassed all others. As an official, his governing excelled even his superiors. No one could follow in his tracks. Then he suddenly turned greedy for wealth, property, and love. Things crashed down like melting ice beyond what words can say. Han Shan says, if you want to attain a peaceful life, settle down at Cold Mountain. Subtle breezes blow through mysterious pine. Listen closely, the sound is really good. Beneath it, someone with graying hair reads the Yellow Emperor and Lao Tzu without ceasing. After 10 years, I can never return. I've even forgotten the way I came, forgotten the way I got here. Sermons? There must be a million, too many to read in a hurry. But if you want a friend, just come on out to Tien Tai. This mountain, sitting deep among the crags, will talk about true principles and chat about dark mysteries. If you don't come to my mountain, your view will be blocked by all of the others in between. Cold Mountain is a house without beams or walls. The 6 doors left and right are open. The hall is a blue sky. The rooms all vacant and vague. The east wall beats on the west wall. And at the center, nothing. Look upon the body as unreal, an image in a mirror, the reflection of the moon in water. Contemplate the mind as formless, yet bright and pure. Not a single thought arising. Empty, yet perceptive. Still, yet illuminating. Complete, like the great emptiness, containing all that is wonderful. This is from Wu Kalan, an early female Taoist master. Apparently there were quite a few female Taoist priests and masters at that time, and I don't know if that continues today or not. My mind is like a jade jar of ice, never invaded by even half a mote of dust. Though the jade jar be obscured without, I pay no mind at all. On the terrace of immortals, I climb straight to the highest level. And this from Lu Tongpin, one of the 8 immortals. People may sit still till the cushion is worn through, but never quite know the real truth. Let me tell you about the ultimate Tao. It is here, enshrined within us. This is from Genpo Sensei. When we finally awaken to clear understanding, and when we feel there are no borders, that there never were, we realize that we are everything. The mountains, the rivers, the grass, the trees, the sun, moon, and stars, and finally the universe, are none other than ourselves. Nothing distinguishes us, nothing separates us from each other. Alienation, fear, jealousy, hatred have vanished. We know in full light that nothing exists outside of ourselves, that consequently nothing is to be feared. Being aware of this state generates compassion. People and things are no longer separate from us, but are on the contrary, like our own body. This is a Buddhist piece from the 3rd patriarch in the Chan lineage, Seng Tsan, the mind of absolute trust. The great way isn't difficult for those who are unattached to their preferences. That's probably far enough, but I'm going to keep going on that. Let go of longing and aversion, and everything will be perfectly clear. When you cling to a hairbreadth of distinction, heaven and earth are set apart. If you want to realize the truth, don't be for or against. The struggle between good and evil is the primal disease of the mind. Not grasping the deeper meaning, you just trouble your mind's serenity. As vast as infinite space, it is perfect and lacks nothing. But because you select and reject, you can't perceive its true nature. Don't get entangled in the world. Don't lose yourself in emptiness. Be at peace in the oneness of things, and all errors will disappear by themselves. For the mind in harmony with the Tao, all selfishness disappears. With not even a trace of self-doubt, you can trust the universe completely. All at once you are free, with nothing left to hold on to. All is empty, brilliant, perfect in its own being. For our final reading, this is one from a current Buddhist teacher, Pema Chodron, who heads a monastery in Nova Scotia. As uncertainty and groundlessness increase, as we lose control of external circumstances, we find ourselves with our backs to the wall. Our response is to cower in the corner, hoping that chaos and suffering will just go away. But in our heart of hearts, we know that will never happen. The alternative is to use this opportunity to start waking up. Which is the more sane approach to our life? If we do decide to start surrendering to our uncontrollable situation and letting go of resistance and resentment, we will have no shortage of opportunities to learn and grow. Our world, no matter how crazy and unreasonable it gets, will become our greatest teacher and ally. the hardest thing to do. But may it be so. May we all find ways to have that appreciation and respect for what life brings us, and see the gifts that it carries, even if they seem horrendous at times. There are gifts there. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We'll do more salons later in the year, but thanks for coming tonight. This is the first one we've done in the sanctuary, and I think I made all the difference that you all came. So hope to see you again. God bless you. May the Tao be with you.